You are listening to the cycling podcast at the Tour de France, brought to you by iWoka, flexible loans built for small businesses. iWoka.co.uk. Today we're in Privas.
Where are we, François?
We're in Cré. Well, I said it in French because this was wrong. We're in Cré, and it's actually written crests. So, I mean, once again, pronunciation police could... I had no idea before today that this place was called Cré. I thought it was crests, but there you
Come
are.
on, François. We bring you on tour with us for your French knowledge, and you don't even know something as basic as that. The reason I asked where we were, because you were just telling us how this is your favourite wine region.
It is, yeah. We're not too far from... we're in the Côte-du-Rhône appellation, and in the Côte-du-Rhône you have the south of the Côte-du-Rhône, that's more or less Côte-du-Rhône village, or Gat Gigondas, and, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and those... Queyranne, Vaqueras, and all these wines. And then you've got the northern Côte-du-Rhône with where we are. Well, some of the best wines in the world, Hermitage, Gros-Hermitage, Saint-Joseph come from here. And I really love this
They all
this area.
sound very nice.
Yeah.
Hello, Lionel.
Hi, Richard.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, well, we're just outside a very pleasant restaurant in Cré. And we haven't yet ordered, have we? We're recording the podcast first. Priorities, podcast first, food later. And we're going to recap an absolutely barnstorming fifth stage of the Tour de France this evening, aren't we?
Well, I mean, it's funny. Sometimes the quietest, most apparently boring stages then produce a twist. I think that the stage a couple of years ago where Peter Sagan and Mark Cavendish clashed and Sagan was sent home, seem to remember that was a really dull stage.
Yeah, it was.
And then it was transformed in the
makes you wonder whether the commissaires don't have instructions to find a twist at the end of boring
stages. It keeps
stages.
you watching, doesn't it? Because you just never know with this sport when something incredible will happen. And something incredible did happen after the stage finished, didn't it?
It did. The tail of the etape, stage 5, from Gap to Privas. The longest neutralised zone in Tour de France history, I think, at 173 kilometres. The race itself was around 10 kilometres long. There was a little bit of wind out on the course, and we saw Ineos Grenadiers marching to the front to keep their leader, Egan Bernal, out of any difficulty. But we saw a fairly routine sprint finish. Wout Van Aert, last seen setting a fierce pace up the climb to Orcières-Merlette yesterday afternoon. Showed that he really is one of the best all-round bike riders in the world. Pulled off a sprint victory similar to the one he took in Albi during last year's Tour. We'll talk a little bit about Van Aert's victory, of course, because the surprise is that he was on team duty yesterday, no doubt about that, but then given his head to go for the stage win today. Must mention that Team Sunweb did very well as well on the run-in. They took charge. They probably looked the most organised. And we were saying about the death of the sprint trains a few days ago. They've got the closest thing to a sprint train, really.
They were fantastic. They didn't really do anything wrong. Casper Pedersen was a lead-out man, did everything right, and it was a twisty, quite technical finish. And I thought they did a great job. And they only didn't win because they had a guy there. I mean, if they could have done one thing, maybe it was to have someone in a sort of sweeper role. And as it turned out, Wout Van Aert was in the perfect place. But I mean, you can't do an awful lot against somebody like that.
No.
How important do you think was the fact that Sam Bennett did the intermediate sprint to secure the green jersey, and maybe lost a little bit of energy there for the final, or on the other hand, maybe Wout Van Aert, who didn't seem to compete in that intermediate sprint, kept strength for the final sprint. Who knows?
Very possibly. I mean, we should mention that the Sunweb rider who took second place was Cees Bol. As you say, didn't do an awful lot wrong. Sam Bennett was third over the line. He'd already put himself into...
On the hoods.
Yeah, he'd already put himself into a great position by hoovering up some points at the intermediate sprint because he was a green jersey in waiting. All he had to do was finish ahead of Peter Sagan, and the green jersey would be on his shoulders tonight, and that is how it turned out. But Richard, as you say, he was sprinting on the brake hoods rather than down on the drops, which was a little bit unusual, although it was slightly draggy uphill, I think, but nevertheless a little bit unusual. And that was that. And so we thought, until word came through that Julian Alaphilippe was going to be penalised 20 seconds. He's in the yellow jersey, of course, as he crossed the line and thought he kept it, but he was penalised 20 seconds for taking a bottle from a Deceuninck-Quick staff member inside the final 20 kilometres, which is not allowed in the rules. You're not allowed to take a bottle either from the team car or from the side of the road in the final 20k. So he has slipped down the overall standings to 16th at 16 seconds, and the new leader is Adam Yates of Mitchelton-Scott. British rider, leads the Tour de France for the first time, and well, he did say that he wouldn't have wanted to take the yellow jersey in these circumstances, but the yellow jersey is on his shoulders and he leads Primoz Roglic by 3 seconds.
You are listening to the Cycling Podcast, brought to you by iWalker. Flexible loans built for small businesses. Join 50,000 customers taking on life's twists and turns and scaling new heights with iWalker. If you run a small business, find out more at iWalker.co.uk. iWoca.co.uk.
Thank you very much to iWalker for sponsoring the Cycling Podcast here at the Tour de France and all year. They've been our title sponsors since March, which has coincided with the whole world being kind of turned upside down, especially if you run a small business. We had some uncertain weeks, didn't we? We didn't know whether we'd be able to carry on or in what form we'd be able to carry on.
Only because there wasn't any racing.
There wasn't any racing for us to cover, and so our business was somewhat on hold. We had to summon up our powers of ingenuity to keep going, didn't we? But iWalker has been keeping the wheels turning for loads of small businesses up and down the UK. If you want to find out more about the kind of support they could offer your small business, go to iWalker.co.uk. That's iwoca.co.uk.
Do you think they'll support small businesses in France? Because it looks really interesting. I mean, I might need some help, actually.
There's only one way to find out, François. We can introduce you, if you like.
Well, why not?
We'll arrange a call.
That could be a good idea, absolutely.
Well, keeping us going, we've had some food delivered to the table. It's very nice indeed, so that's excellent. At the moment, the main thing is to keep us going, isn't it? Big talk. I mean, it's kind of unfair on Wout Van Aert that the big talking point of the day is now the destination of the yellow jersey, because his performance was sensational. And again, a bit like Primoz Roglic the day before, not winning by accident, but winning just because you can. That's what it looked like. He and Roglic are in such incredible form that it was almost like Wout Van Aert has clearly got this form. His job here is to help his team win the Tour de France in Paris, but there's almost a sense that, well, let's not waste it, and you might as well go off and win that stage and then be back on team duties again tomorrow.
Is it not also an endorsement of the strengths of the other riders within the team that they can allow Van Aert to go off and try and win the stage today, which he did? We always kind of, I guess, criticise Team Ineos for being so single-minded, their pursuit of one goal and one goal only. They'd never give Michał Kwiatkowski a chance on an intermediate stage or a transitional stage. It just doesn't happen. You never ever see that happen. They don't have anyone who could even contest in bunch sprints, really. I mean, Kwiatkowski probably would be competitive, the most competitive of anyone in a kind of perhaps a little punchy finish.
There aren't many riders like Wout Van Aert, though, are there?
That's true.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, we tend to focus because it's the Tour and we're moving on day by day stages. But look at the performance. The best rider since COVID-19 struck is Wout Van Aert, without any question. He won on so many different terrains and some of the monuments of cycling, and is young. And the way he rode yesterday in Orcières-Merlette, okay, it might not be the toughest climb ever in the Tour de France, and the way he rode to just out-sprinting the best sprinters in the bunch today, the way he won. I mean, he started his season by winning two of the most different classics you can think of.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy can do everything.
It looked easy for him as well today.
He's an all-rounder. He's versatile. He takes it, and he was saying today after his win, well, tomorrow, back to the domestique. I mean, we've all seen on the social networks the picture of Wout Van Aert with bidons all over his jersey in the back. I mean, this man can do absolutely everything, including the domestique.
What I'd like to see him do is win a sprint like that with that bidon vest on. I think that's all that's left for him.
10 bottles up the back of his jersey and still win the sprint. Wouldn't put it past him.
The physical ability is there for all to see, but what was so impressive today was the positioning and the skill to be there. It was obvious, it was clear that somewhere were really well drilled and they had a great lead out. And of all, there are some really great sprinters in this race, but of all of them, it was Wout Van Aert who was in the prime position. And the skill to get there and to stay there can be very easily kind of overlooked. And he had the speed in the end, but also just the ability to be there is impressive.
And yet, is that something that might just chip away at Jumbo-Visma's overall support for Roglic and Dumoulin in week 3? François, you're shaking your head. You don't think it's a factor at all?
No, I don't think that. Well, we in a way, we were frustrated of Van Aert's abilities last year when he won his first stage in his first Tour de France, because he crashed out of the race, as you remember. It was quite a dramatic crash as well, and maybe so we don't know what he might have done in the third week. But it didn't look today. I mean, today, apart from the pulse, the kick of energy in the finish, I mean, there was not, as you said, there was not a race all day. So everybody said energy, including Wout Van Aert. So I don't think it's it's spoiled his energy too much. And going back, just because we mentioned it to the what happened before the sprint and this long kind of neutralized stage, as you said. Our colleagues of the official website. letour.fr, they've got lots of stats and background and context and archives, and they couldn't trace, at least since the early 90s, any stage without a breakaway in the Tour de France. I seem to remember personally in the 80s, those days when Jean-Paul Van Poppel was winning stages, that there might have been quite a few without a breakaway. But it's quite unusual, which raises a question, actually, because at the end of the stage, all of the riders, even some of the commentators, were trying to explain why it was in the end, the riders can decide on the truth, but why doesn't it happen more often? Why do riders actually feel obliged, with three reckless guys feel obliged to stay up front for 150 km before being caught?
The reason is in the studio. Johan Alfredo is not here, is he? He's not riding.
That's right, yeah. Johan Alfredo is in Paris commentating.
Yeah.
And actually, he was, as you say, Johan Alfredo looked at, was commenting at the end of the stage and was saying, this is a disgrace. Had I been there, and his mate Rossetto, I think Rossetto is here, isn't he? But we haven't seen him anyway. So
I haven't seen anyone.
No, that's right. Yeah, but once again, yes. Some of the you would have thought some teams we saw Jérôme Cousin the other day. Usually, you expect the teams who don't expect anything from stage wins or for the Tour, except showing their jerseys to do something. But today, who called the truth? Maybe Jumbo-Visma, if they're really the leaders of the pack, and won in the end. But yeah, it was a very unexpected sight, and we haven't seen that for a long time.
I was trying to think back to the last most boring stage of the Tour, and I got back to 2009 and the stage at Issoudun, when the riders went on an unacknowledged and unofficial go slow because they'd been told they couldn't use their earpiece radios for 2 stages of the Tour, and on this particular day they just let a break go and they kept it at sort of 2 minutes and absolutely nothing happened, and the bunch just went round sort of rotating. It was almost kind of to prove the point. They rotated around. 2 riders from each team went through and off and through and off over the course of the afternoon, and then they reinstated the radios for the other stage that they were going to take them away for, and that kind of killed that experiment. But today, what was the reason for the kind of the easy pace? I mean, the headwind was one thing. The fact that today's stage was sandwiched between a proper mountain finish yesterday and a proper mountain finish tomorrow, early in the Tour. That there is only so much energy that's got to be kind of rationed out over 3 weeks.
Yeah, sometimes good ideas from the organisers and from the route designers turned out to be not so good ideas. Like, it was exciting to see the Turini on day 2 and to see Orcières-Merlette on day 4 and to see Montegual in day 6 and find ourselves from the Alps to the Pyrenees within 4 days. But in the end, maybe it was too much too early, and the peloton decided, they were entitled to take it easy. Remember when they put the Ventoux the day before the finish in Paris? Well, nothing happened the first time they did it because the race was kind of neutralized again. It's always often said, the organizers design a route and then the riders do with the route what they would want to do with it. And obviously the decision was made by every team involved to call a truce today until bad luck struck for
but there aren't
Alaphilippe.
many teams like your Wanty Group Gobert's now who even the Pro Conti teams, Arkea Samsic, their focus is Nairo Quintana, Total Direct Energy, you could say Bonifacio maybe, for a stage win rather than just putting riders in breakaways. B&B Hotels and Brian Cocart could be somebody they want to back in the sprints rather than...
He was top 10 in the 3 sprints of the Tour.
So there aren't many teams, who don't have options, and so that therefore, whose raison d'etre here is to put people in breakaways. They've got other goals.
Chute à l'arrière du peloton. Cycling podcast team car at the back of the pack, please.
Our Tour de France coverage this year is sponsored by the next generation Watt bike Atom. And in the last episode we talked about how the new electromagnetic resistance system allows for instant gear changes, which is important on platforms like Zwift, where it's important whenever you're doing any indoor training.
How did it feel then, Lionel, this new electromagnetic resistance system?
I think the biggest change was it feels more like riding a bike outdoor on the road. When you're coming down a descent and then suddenly the road goes up, the difference in gradient comes on quite smoothly, doesn't it, in real life? And that was perhaps one of the things that all of this technology has been trying to replicate. And this is the closest that I've experienced so far. You feel more like momentum from riding in a big gear doesn't just come to a standstill. There's a transition from pushing a heavier gear on the downhill and then changing gears, or if you're in the ergo mode, the machine's doing it for you. So it feels less like the transitions from one type of riding, whether you're in a big gear to a small gear. It's not as much of a jump. It's a much smoother transition.
So you can maintain your very smooth pedal stroke, Lionel, that you're famous for.
Funny you should say that. Later on in the tour, we'll hear about the pedalling effectiveness score and the analysis that the Watt bike can do to give you basically information about how smooth and rounded your pedal stroke is. And I was in for a bit of a shock, but more about that in a week or so, I think. Anyway, the next generation Watt bike Atom is now available to buy from £90 per month. See wattbike.com for details. That's wattbike.com.
Well, we have a new yellow jersey, chaps, and I've never seen anybody look so uncomfortable in yellow since, I don't know, you would have to have the complexion of Donald Trump to look that uncomfortable in yellow, I think, just the clash. But Adam Yates was wheeled in. I mean, one of the unusual things we'll hear in a moment from Matt White, his sports director, and Sam Bewley, his teammate, one of our audio diarists. But he'd showered and got changed into casual clothes when he was told he was in the yellow jersey. So he had to get back into his cycling kit. And, he appeared in the press conference afterwards and there was no sort of polishing it at all, which tends to be the way of the Yates twins, doesn't it? They're pretty honest guys, and Adam Yates clearly didn't feel comfortable at all being in the yellow jersey and taking it in those circumstances.
In the same time, I saw a few of my friends or contacts, saying, "Oh well, it's in, like recalling the days when we were in Orcières-Merlette yesterday, famous for Luis Ocaña and the way Merckx refused to wear the yellow jersey. I mean, Unfortunately, in this case, Julian Alaphilippe has only himself to blame, and on the Deceuninck-Quick Step team for what happened. And I mean, the fact that they did what they did. So Adam Yates is really a legitimate yellow jersey holder. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And it's funny because the tour started with lots of stories about the death of British cycling. No more prospects, and it was on the way down. And on the Tour de France without Geraint Thomas, without Chris Froome, again we have a British rider in the yellow jersey.
I mean, wearing the yellow jersey is massive, isn't it? And Adam Yates didn't look like something enormous had happened to him at all. But it is massive, and just to have that on your palmarès is a huge, huge thing for him. Yeah, the circumstances were odd, but will people remember that when there's a list reeled out of all the British riders, for example, who've worn the yellow jersey, or when he retires and can say that he once wore the yellow jersey in the Tour de France, even if it is only for a day. Well, we spoke to Matt White after the finish, his sports director, and we've also got an entry from Sam Bewley, one of our audio diarists. So let's hear from them both now. First Matt White, and then Sam Bewley.
Yeah, it's a weird one, but hey, we don't make the rules.
When did you hear about what happened?
Just as the bus was about to pull out of the parking area to go home.
And what was the reaction?
Oh, it was a mixed one. There was a fair bit of it. I got my phone call from Terry Gouverneur, and he just said, Matthew, Adam Yates is in the yellow jersey, and Alaphilippe has a 20-second time penalty. Can he come to the podium now? And Adam had already been out of the shower and was getting a bit deep. And when I told the boys erupted in the bus there. They're pretty excited. Didn't obviously know the details. We didn't know the details of his time penalty. And then about 30 seconds later, they showed on the television that him taking the bottle inside the 20K. And then, Adam put some clothes back on, some bike clothes back on. He was already in his casual kit and moseyed on up to the podium area.
So the way to get the yellow jersey at the Tour de France is to come looking for stages?
Oh, it's the only way to get it, mate. It's the only way to get it. Just keep looking for stages or under rocks.
I mean, Adam seemed understandably underwhelmed, I think. Probably not the circumstances in which he wanted to take the yellow jersey. I mean, how does that affect things? I mean, are you trying to sort of tell him this is a huge moment in his career?
Oh, it is a huge moment in his career. And at the end of the day, what comes around goes around. Adam probably should have had the yellow jersey the day of the old Froome Gate running up Mount Ventoux. Actually, he was the best on GC if they hadn't moved the time, hadn't stopped the time at 2 kilometres to go. So, what comes around goes around. Of course, he would rather have taken the yellow jersey from his effort. But at the end of the day, we're in second place because of the effort he made on stage one. And if we hadn't have made that effort on stage one, we wouldn't have been able to take the yellow jersey today. But it's a big moment for him, and I'm sure it'll be a little bit bittersweet. But at the end of the day, it changes nothing with how we're racing tomorrow and for the rest of the tour.
Well, I guess it does change nothing. Tomorrow, it would be a stage that on paper looks like it might suit him, and whether he's first or anywhere in the top 10 doesn't really affect the way he'll ride, does it?
No, it doesn't. And maybe some of our big boys might have a little bit more work than they would have normally planned tomorrow. It'll be a relatively easy day. Famous last words to control tomorrow. We'll just make sure a small break goes up the road, and then all the action will be in the last 35 kilometres.
And I guess Alaphilippe will be hurting and want to take it back. Yeah,
I don't think he's got too much of a chance. There's some other guys climbing pretty good. Primoz Roglic is the favourite for me for tomorrow. It's a tough climb. I wouldn't be surprised that Jumbo try to push the pace on the Cat 1, and then there's still a fair bit to go after that Cat 1, but it's not as hard as yesterday's final, but it should be a pretty select group contesting the last 10K.
I mean, one final thing, we saw on stage 2, Christophe obviously in yellow and his team controlling a stage that they really, knew that he had no chance of defending the jersey. But there's a tradition there, an etiquette there, I suppose, and I guess it's good for a team as well to be that visible for so much of a stage. Yeah, definitely, and like you said before, it's a stage that we think Adam can go very well in. So it only suits us to make sure that the right combination goes at the start, and that we can deliver Adam into the bottom of the climb with a couple of guys around him, and battle it out with the best climbers tomorrow for the win.
Hey guys, Sam Bewley here again from Mitchelton-Scott, checking in. Wow, 5 stages down now, and what can I say about today? It was not what we expected in a lot of different ways, actually. The breakaway didn't go. There wasn't a breakaway. It wasn't even really an attack. Most people were expecting potentially a longer start with more interested teams, but I think after a number of hard days and a couple of hard days to come at the end of this week, people were happy to take it pretty easy today, and that's the way the stage went. Obviously ended in a bunch sprint there. And yeah, well, for us, we ended up in the yellow jersey with Adam Yates, which was a huge surprise after Alaphilippe was penalised for a late feed there inside the last 20k and docked a 20-second time penalty. Obviously, yeah, for us, it's big to have the yellow jersey in any team, but as Adams has said in his social media and a couple of comments after the presentation, that for sure you don't want to take the yellow jersey like that. It's much more satisfying to take it with your legs and by achieving it through your performances on the bike. But nonetheless, we have the yellow jersey now, and that's cool, very cool for our team after a tough year, and a bit of a shame for Alaphilippe, but he's a classy guy, and like he also said in the media, he'll pick himself up and move on tomorrow and keep doing what he wants to do, and so will we. We're like we said earlier, we're here to target stages, and that's what we're going to continue to do. We'll defend the yellow jersey with respect, and as the race goes on, carry on with our goals of winning stages. So that's the plan here in our camp anyway. So yeah, move forward with that. What else is there to report? Yeah, we've got a few different things going on, a few changes within the bubble since we're dealing with this pandemic. So we've all got solo rooms here at the Tour de France, which is very rare. Normally we have a roommate, have a bit of company for the 3 weeks of racing. And yeah, personally for me, I always enjoy having a roommate. Yeah, shoot the shit a little bit after the stages, and if someone's feeling the pinch a little bit, you sort of help each other through. But given these unprecedented times, we're rooming solo, so the only entertainment I've got really is sending these diaries through to you guys so you can hear my voice and talk into a phone, and that's keeping me entertained. And obviously Game of Thrones. I tell you what, I had this master plan that I was going to tick through Game of Thrones through this tour. Long series, long episodes. I thought, perfect, that'll get me through the race. I actually haven't watched an episode for about 3 or 4 days. Tour de France this year is feeling much more like the Vuelta, actually. Late starts, late finishes. Arriving at the hotel, it's 8 o'clock now, and we've only just got in. So time you get in, put the feet up for a little bit, have a massage, head straight to dinner. It's sort of 10:30 by the time you get back to your room. And those Game of Thrones episodes, they're an hour long, so I haven't got time actually to get through as much as I thought I would. But there's always a rest day. So we'll smack a couple out then and let you know what I think about it. But to be honest, right now I'm not really into it like everybody else says they were. But perseverance is key. All right, guys, chat soon.
Well, it looks like Sam Bewley will be riding on or near the front quite a bit tomorrow to defend the yellow jersey. I did wonder about this whole thing about how they came into the race targeting stage wins and not really interested in the overall at all. And of course now they've got the yellow jersey, and Esteban Chavez is right up there overall. And Richard, you mentioned about how it's a big deal for Adam Yates. Think back to 2016 when he was 4th in the Tour and was in the white jersey for all those days and won the white jersey. And we thought perhaps he would be the Yates brother who would win a Grand Tour first, maybe. And then, of course, Simon Yates has come in and won the Vuelta. But for Adam Yates, it is unfortunate, the circumstances, but the rules are the rules. He's in the yellow jersey, and I bet if he keeps the yellow jersey on Montegual tomorrow night, then it'll be unequivocal.
Yeah. And once again, if the main target was to win a stage, obviously tomorrow's stage to Montegual was one stage that suited Adam Yates really well. And Eddie won if he wins that, or Eddie won it without the yellow jersey, he would have taken it. So it's kind of a kind of preview actually of what probably Mitchelton-Scott were planning. Like Adam Yates winning tomorrow, and well, if he did, probably taking given the short time gap between himself and Julian Alaphilippe, he would have taken the jersey tomorrow. So tomorrow, nothing really changes except that now for Adam Yates, it's also about winning the stage, but also about keeping the jersey. Is it going to be extra motivation, or is it to be a burden? I mean, that might be one of the issues of tomorrow's stage.
The Cycling Podcast is supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport, fueled by science.
Thank you very much indeed to Science in Sport for supporting the Cycling Podcast, as they have done since 2016. If you want 25% off your Science Sport products, go to scienceinsport.com and enter the code SISCP25. Will we get on our bikes tomorrow, Lionel? Maybe?
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Lovely countryside around here, isn't it? Rolling roads, no major climbs. I did notice in the little village we're in, Alex, there's a Mørkøv Alex, which I reckon we could climb up there and have a coffee.
Let's Everest it tomorrow, Lionel. Anyway, let's
Mørkøv it.
Let's also get back onto the topic of the race today. In particular, the decision to strip Alaphilippe of the jersey. Well, not strip him of the jersey, but dock him time for taking a feed. I mean, I saw it happen. I saw him go for that feed in 17 kilometres to go. It didn't strike me at the time that it was an illegal feed. He clearly was very thirsty, but the fault was clear, and the punishment is clear. So there can't be that much. There shouldn't be too much controversy about it, should there?
I don't think there is any controversy about it. The only controversy you can get is how can the Deceuninck-Quick, arguably the richest and the best team in the world. I mean, in many ways.
They dispute the richest. Certainly, if you listen to Patrick Lefebvre.
Yeah, of course. But I mean, they've been around forever, and they're one of the teams winning the most races every season. They've got the experience. They've been on the tour forever. How can you do such a schoolboy's mistake? What was this? Quick-Step staff member doing on the side of the road?
I wouldn't like to be that staff member tonight.
Yeah, I mean, and as one of our listeners pointed out, if there really was a need for Alaphilippe to pick a bottle at that stage, send one of his teammates to pick it up, not Alaphilippe himself.
I mean, it all looks so simple as we sit here about to eat our dinner. But I mean, for a start, the soigneur or staff member, whoever it was, may not have driven down the course to get to the point where he or she was stood by the roadside, and so
And we assume it was a soigneur. It might just. You're right.
I mean, there's so many. The Tour de France and these races are so complex that somebody could have driven in and thought, "Oh, I'm outside 20k to go," but actually turns out that they're not, and they're stood in a place where giving a bottle is going to lead to a penalty, and also drop back to the team car and get a bottle and then come back. By then, it's 6k to go, and Alaphilippe's gasping.
I can understand what you're saying. I can understand what the many reasons why this happened. But once again, this is professional sport. This is a yellow jersey in France, in the Tour de France, worn by a Frenchman, and to lose it this is the sort of thing that shouldn't happen.
Come on! I mean, sports. Zinedine Zidane got sent off for France in a World Cup final.
Absolutely.
You couldn't be, if you were covering football, you'd be saying, "Oh, this is professional sport. This should never happen." Mistakes happen.
It was inexcusable. I mean, Zinedine Zidane is from is Marseille born. Is from my town. Is one of my favorite players ever. What he did in this final was absolutely inexcusable.
We're not really equating these two. That was a violent act. Today was I suppose what you could debate is the merit of the rule. I mean, what's the point? We hear back from in the 60s when riders were only allowed 2 bidons a day, and there were rules about how much fluid they were allowed to take in. We look at that now and go, that's crazy. If Alaphilippe was seriously in need of a drink, even with just 17 kilometres to go, it's kind of bonkers that he's in a sport where you get penalised for taking a drink when you need a drink.
The reason for the rule is to stop the sticky bottle on the final climb of a mountain
as you
or
said,
whatever.
Henri Pellissier in the same position would have given up the race and called for a press conference in a bar.
Well, shall we hear? Actually, before we hear from one of Alaphilippe's teammates, we're going to hear a bit of from one of our audio diarists, Ryan Gibbons from NTT Pro Cycling, because he's just sent in his dispatch for tonight. And we talked about Well, Lionel was very, dismissive of the fact that it was a neutralised stage, that they didn't race, that they took it easy, they took the day off. Very, but we've had the view from inside the bunch is a bit more nuanced than that, Lionel. There's a bit more to it.
That's really.
Not to,
Should we
just as well you're not encountering any riders.
Should we mention Brian Holmes' tweets?
Let's play Ryan Gibbons.
Let's hear Ryan Gibbons.
Stage 5 of the Tour de France was quite a strange one. Don't think there's been many races in history, and especially stage of the Tour de France where no breakaway's gone or no one's been motivated or keen to head out and show themselves. So it was quite an unusual first 50 Ks. After the first sprint, though, I think the whole peloton decided collectively, we may as well just keep riding and get to the finish. Us at NTT, there was quite a bit of wind in the final, so from about 110 Ks, with about 70 Ks to go, we thought, rather be proactive and be towards the front in case something does happen, we're there and ready for it. I personally went to the front with about 70 Ks to go just to ensure that we were in a good position. And then, because I think everyone was quite fresh from a relatively easy day, it did turn out to be quite a fast finale, quite technical and a bit of crosswind with that final left-hander at 9 Ks to go, really ripped it apart. Unfortunately, I'd already done my job, so I couldn't be part of that. But that's bike racing, in modern cycling, don't know what to expect. But good day for the sprinters. I think it was quite a hard finale and would have been exciting to watch the last 10 Ks, but I can bet it was rather boring for the viewers for the first 3 hours of the day. But looking forward to tomorrow. I think unfortunate to what happened to Alaphilippe. I think it's good that the jury, did penalise, as they make an example. The rules are rules, but it is going to make tomorrow very, very interesting from a tactical point of view.
Just to pick up on that, right, Richard, just because something's boring doesn't mean it's not hard, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So interesting to hear from Gibbons there. The race wasn't really on in the first 50 kilometres. Once the break hadn't gone, suddenly the game changes, and then the peloton thinks, well, let's not let anything go now, because if we give it 2 minutes, 3 minutes, we've got to then chase it down. Let's just keep the pace high enough to discourage anything else from going away. That's all perfectly understandable, and I'm not saying that the riders had some kind of feet up day, but for the spectators, that's pretty boring.
The question is, who kept the pace at 42 kph?
That is the question.
If it's, and it was probably the case. I mean, we didn't watch lots of it because it was so boring. But it's bound to have it. It's bound to have been Deceuninck-Quick. So Deceuninck-Quick set the pace, and in the end, to avoid to make sure there was a bunch sprint. In the end, they lose the sprint and they lose the jersey. It was not a great move.
Thirsty, but they did end up with the yellow jersey. Shall we hear from
green
Michael
jersey?
I mean the green jersey. Sorry,
Richard.
I'm delirious because I'm waiting for my food here. And I know how Alaphilippe felt. He was desperate. I'm going to stick my hand up in a moment.
Yeah.
Shall we hear from Michael Mørkøv, one of Alaphilippe's teammates?
Hello guys. So I'm just having a massage. I feel I deserved it after now some hard days. So it was a very rare stage today because there was never any breakaway, and I don't know, in the last 10 or 20 years that maybe happened once before or something. So it was obviously a special day in the Tour de France, but nevertheless it turned out to be a very hard and hectical last 50 Ks actually, because there was some doubts about crosswinds and coming into the sprint. Even the last 10 Ks was really hard. A bit different stage. Also, I was surprised nobody wanted to get out in front, but I think it tells more about how hard the first part of the tour have been so far. Obviously, in the team we're really disappointed. We lost the yellow jersey today. We was expecting that we could keep it, and we was expecting we should fight for it tomorrow, but now it's all gone. Of course, it's a disappointment, but we just have to keep the heads up and look for new opportunities and stay positive. And I think there will be much good opportunities to come in the coming stages. On the other hand, we're very proud to put Sam in green jersey. It's his first green jersey, and I think he really deserved that. It will be beautiful to see him tomorrow in the green kit. Yeah, he did a good sprint in the end in the hoods. It's not so often you see sprinters sprinting in the hoods, but that's where he felt most comfortable today. He even did it in some of the intermediate sprints as well. Me, myself, I was actually Danish champions in the hood. Somebody was laughing, but in the end, I think the winner is laughing, so I think you can also sprint in the hoods.
Well, Sam Bennett in the green jersey, first Irishman in green for 31 years. It would have been Sean Kelly on the Champs-Élysées in 1989, the last Irishman to wear the green jersey in the Tour de France. Sam Bennett is in green. He did say in the press conference he was obviously a little bit disappointed not to win the stage, but the green jersey is a target for him and the team, and so there are more sprint opportunities coming. So it's not game over in that respect at all, and now they have the green jersey to look after.
To be honest, I saw an Irishman in a green jersey in Col d'Est the other day.
Yes,
creeping up the Col d'Est.
The Irish are glossing over that. They're preferring to look back to 1989, I think. Anyway, we should wrap things up because I'm sure dinner is imminent.
Well, just on that point about dinner, I'll wait for dinner. François, you made a point earlier about how the Tour de France is on Vuelta time with the late stage finishes, but the French restaurants are not on Vuelta time, so we're having to record in amongst courses. So it's going to be a challenging old Tour de France in that respect, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, before we go, another summit finish tomorrow, Mont Aiguille. Only the second time the Tour has been up there. Mont Aiguille. I have difficulty saying it. It's a difficult word to say, but it's famous more than for Tour de France stages as the scene of the mythical race or the imagined race in Tim Krabbe's The Rider, which is, a lot of people say, the best book ever written about cycling and about being a cyclist. And that is the focus of our episode of Kilometres Zero tomorrow. Spoiler alert, we did actually get an interview with Tim Krabbe, so he's in the episode. We also hear from Lawrence Ten Dam, from Tom Southam, and from Max Leonard, who's ridden a lot in that area and written books about cycling as well. So tune in for that.
That's Kilometre Zero. Just a mention for our curated wine cases, curated by Greg Andrews at Divine Cellars. Go to divinecellars.com to buy any of the cases of Tour de France themed wine. And if you want one of our Cycling Podcast jerseys, because, Richard, I haven't just brought my Irish jersey to the Tour de France, I brought the Cycling Podcast jersey as well. And if you would like one of those, go to thecyclingpodcast.com and you can find a link to our shop and you can buy one of our beautiful Katusha jerseys.
Lovely. Well, that's all. Yeah, Kilometre Zero. Today it was Tour de France Femina, and it was all about La Course, but also looking ahead to the Women's Tour de France, we think it might be called, that will launch in 2022, week-long stages. And there's some interesting stuff in there. And as we said, tomorrow's episode is The Rider Special. Kilometre Zero series every Monday to Friday is supported by Zwift. Thanks very much to Zwift. That's all from us for tonight. Thank you very much, François.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel.
Thank you, Richard.